When this whole thing unfolded on Sunday, me personally, I felt upset because as a black man, I felt like you shouldn't put that type of display out there on public, because at the end of the day, you might have two different ways of going about it, but we're still fighting for the same cause. And I think the outside forces who don't want to see a lot of these issues talked about or rectified, they're looking at this particular situation where you got Eric Reid and Malcolm Jenkins having a public display. They're applauding this because at the end of the day, they want the infighting, they want the strife to happen with these two parties, these two individuals. So for me, I would have rather see, if these guys have disagreements, which they clearly do that in a private setting, not on public display where everyone can see what's going on between these two sides.
Well, let me say this. First of all, I'm uncomfortable from this perspective. And Max, I'm not aiming this at you or anybody else. I'm just telling you that as a black man, I'm uncomfortable with talking to anybody but black people about this subject. But it's national television, and Eric Reid put it out on Front Street, so I understand everybody has a right to talk about this. But when you have a black man calling another black man a sellout, that's something that has to be addressed. And I think it primarily should be addressed by us. And let me tell you why. Eric Reid is wrong because of the words that he used. You can have a disagreement, and to point to what Damian Woody just highlighted. But let's analyze and dissect what's transpiring here. Eric Reid is a supporter of Colin Kaepernick and the causes that obviously Colin Kaepernick wants to address. Now, the Players Coalition, their objective has never been about Colin Kaepernick, and they're unapologetic about that, whether it's Malcolm Jenkins, it's Anquan Bolden, or anybody else. They were on a mission to garner whatever level of support that they could garner in order to address those individual causes associated with racial oppression and inequality, the incarceration issue, Max, which you have accurately pointed out on many, many occasions with the heightened level of sensitivity that it deserves, and you deserve to be applauded for that. But the reality is that Eric Reid not only wanted Colin Kaepernick to get a job, he also felt that Colin Kaepernick should have led the talks with the owners. So he was never on board with them, even though at some point in time, he was a part of the Players Coalition until he backed out a couple of days before they had reached an agreement with the owners for $89 million. But let's get into the egregiousness of Eric Reid in this matter. Not only do you speak, and you speak so insultingly and disgracefully against Malcolm Jenkins, you went on the field. Remember, when they've got those coin tosses, that's the captains that are out there. Eric Reid is no captain. He just arrived on the team. He went out there, didn't let Ron Rivera know, and wanted to make a scene on the football field. Now, Damian, correct me if I'm wrong. I think if you want to get at Malcolm Jenkins, somehow, some way along the lines as football players, you can find a way to do it. So it's not to me an accident or a coincidence that you picked a football field on a Sunday to make this kind of scene. And why do you make the scene? For exactly what reason? Because you feel that Malcolm Jenkins and the Players Coalition co-opted the situation. Well, how did they co-opt it? You had your issues in support of Colin Kaepernick. They were saying the issue is bigger than Colin Kaepernick. We appreciate Colin Kaepernick. We spoke to him on many occasions. We tried to get him involved. But nevertheless, he chose not to join with us, which we respect. So we're going to go about the business of getting a kind of deal where ultimately, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Can I ask you a question? Because how I understood the events is differently than how you understood the event. So I want to make sure we're on the same page here in the audience. From what I understood is Eric Reid actually started the movement along with Colin Kaepernick. Malcolm Jenkins might have got involved later with the Players Coalition when that was developed. And then why Colin Kaepernick and Eric Reid backed out is because Malcolm Jenkins was agreeing to a deal with the NFL to essentially sell the movement. Jeff, if you could please hold on for 1 second. To essentially sell the movement for $100 million and agree to no longer protest.
Which so that $100 million was already earmarked, apparently, and it was just being moved over.
To being sold out, or he was selling out the movement, because that was his movement.
Well, let me tell you this. Is that what you
also understood? Is that what you heard as well?
That's basically my understanding with a few different nuggets here. Okay. We are under the impression that Colin Kaepernick's protest led to that meeting with the owners. That is false. Colin Kaepernick protested, but it wasn't until September of 2017 when Donald Trump at a rally in Huntsville, Alabama, said that the players should be fired, that everything stirred. So one could easily make the argument that it wasn't about Colin Kaepernick's protest, because Colin Kaepernick's protest alone, in concert with Eric Reid and others, would not have gotten the owners to the negotiating table. It was the fact that Donald Trump had said the incendiary comments that he had said about the players, which really stirred it and elevated it to another level, where more players joined in, and as a result, it forced the owners to come to the table. There was nothing about the Colin Kaepernick protest that forced that meeting. So if you're Eric Reid, you know this. And if you know this, why are you acting that way? And then to act like because somebody disagrees with you, that's a problem that only exists in our community. Other people, I shouldn't say that because I don't know how other communities think. Let me apologize for that. What I will say is this: we're sellouts. Folks are sellouts when they disagree. How is it that we can't simply disagree intelligently, explain our positions as to why, and move on, as opposed to giving credence to those that were looking at us? And you looking at Eric Reid yesterday, and you know what proponents of Donald Trump in his position were saying? You see, this is what we were talking about here. But there's supposed to be about black unity, and look at them.